Buenos días. Quiero dar la bienvenida al Ministro del Interior del Reino Unido y agradecerle su presencia en la sede de la Agencia EFE. Es un honor recibirle, y más aún en un momento tan interesante para las relaciones con el Reino Unido, por la incertidumbre sobre el futuro y en este país, en Reino Unido, y en general en toda Europa, y también por las relaciones con España. Gracias a todos por asistir a este acto, que además permite situar a EFE como lugar de encuentro, debate e información. Fernando Pajares, veterano periodista de EFE, actuará como moderador. José Manuel Sanz, nuestro jefe de internacional, hará las preguntas. Sin más, les dejo con él para escuchar al ministro británico. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Muy buenos días a todos. Good afternoon, Mr. Home Secretary, Ambassador Manley, embajadores de Ecuador y de Jordania, colegas, amigos todos. El señor Sajid Javid nos honra con su presencia y con su participación en este foro de líderes de la Agencia EFE, a 5 meses apenas de haber asumido el cargo de Ministro del Interior del Reino Unido. Fue nombrado para este cargo el pasado 30 de abril. Hay que recordar que Interior es uno de los 4 grandes departamentos ministeriales en el gobierno británico. El primero es la oficina de la propia primera ministra o el primer ministro de turno. El segundo es el ministro de Hacienda, Ministerio de Hacienda, y el tercero es el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, el Home Office. Cuando fue nombrado ministro, el gobierno y los medios de comunicación destacaron mucho que el señor Javid es el primer británico de origen pakistaní en llegar a un puesto de tantísima responsabilidad. Estamos seguros de que en adelante esto no será noticia. Nació hace 48 años en Inglaterra, concretamente en Rochdale, condado de Lancashire. Estudió en una escuela pública, una escuela estatal, quiero decir, de Bristol, y se licenció en Política y Economía por la Universidad de Exeter. Antes de entrar en política, el señor Javid fue vicepresidente del Chase Manhattan Bank en Nueva York y un poco más tarde, años después, directivo del Deutsche Bank en Londres y en Singapur. En 2009 decidió dedicarse al servicio público con el Partido Conservador y un año después, en 2010, ganó su escaño por la circunscripción de Bromsgrove, en Worcestershire. Worcestershire es un condado que nos suena por la salsa Worcester. La marca fundamental que conocemos aquí es la salsa Perrins. Los británicos la echan en la comida y dicen que está mucho más rica. Cosa que no vamos a discutir aquí. Lo que está claro es que es absolutamente imprescindible para hacer un buen Bloody Mary, que es la bebida que tomamos aquí con el pretexto de que se quita la resaca. Mr. Javid ha sido secretario de Estado de Vivienda, Comunidades y Gobierno Local, también de Cultura, Medios de Comunicación y Deporte, también de Negocios, Innovación y Skills, destrezas, habilidades, además de otros cargos en el Ministerio del Tesoro o Hacienda, como diríamos en español. Hace un par de semanas, en una entrevista que dio al veterano periodista de la BBC, Andrew Marr, el ministro dijo que sus 2 grandes prioridades eran el terrorismo y la inmigración. Habló de los envenenamientos en suelo británico que atribuyó al gobierno ruso. Dijo que se trataba de alguien en el Kremlin. El Kremlin, como sabemos todos, es una estructura complejísima, con lo cual él no pudo situar en qué instancia del Kremlin está la responsabilidad de esos envenenamientos en suelo británico. Ya dijo Churchill en una frase muy famosa aquello de que Rusia es una adivinanza envuelta en un misterio dentro de un enigma. Habló también del Brexit. Antes del referéndum de 2016, el señor Javid era partidario de que el Reino Unido permaneciera en la Unión Europea con ciertos matices y ahora apoya a la primera ministra May en que es mejor que no haya acuerdo a firmar un mal acuerdo. Y habló finalmente sobre detenciones y deportaciones irregulares de migrantes en su país. Pero no avancemos nada más de lo que dijo entonces, porque hoy, ahora, en este momento, señor ministro, tiene usted la palabra. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. Estoy encantado de estar hoy aquí en Madrid. That's all the Spanish you're getting from me today. Can I also take this opportunity to thank the EFE for hosting this event today. Thank you very much. Now, as you've just heard, I've been lucky to hold various positions in the British government. But one similarity between them all is that I have found that I spend a lot of time trying to convince people, others, that how warm and open and productive their relationship is with Britain. I'm pleased to say that with Spain, the UK already has a strong and very valuable relationship. We have a very proud history of working together. And I'm not just talking about Gareth Bale helping Real Madrid in the Champions League or even David Silva helping Manchester City win the Premier League. There are, of course, some very strong ties between our two great nations. More than 180,000 Spaniards live in the UK, and 2 million visit the UK each year. 19 million Brits visited Spain last year, and around 300,000 have made their home in the UK. 300,000 Spaniards have made their home in the UK. We have 5,000 Spanish people working in our National Health Service, and another 5,000 working in scientific research, including trying to find cures for things like Alzheimer's and cancer. There are over 12,000 Spaniards studying in UK universities, and some 55,000 students are in British schools in Spain. That means that British schools have more of a footprint here than any other place in Europe. We are also, of course, allies in business. Spain is now the UK's 7th largest trading partner, and our total bilateral trade was up 5% last year. The UK is Spain's top destination for foreign direct investment. But perhaps it is our security relationship that really is the jewel in the crown. Whether it be against Daesh, drug runners, human traffickers, we could not ask for more from Spanish law enforcement and intelligence agencies in terms of commitment and collaboration. Our two countries regularly work together to protect our people. We share tools to crack terror cells. We stop murderers and rapists slipping through our borders. We end exploitation by organized crime gangs, and we bring monsters to justice. It is a sad fact that our countries share many of the same security threats and challenges. We have a shared history, for example, of fighting terrorism, be it in the form of the IRA or ETA. Our countries have both also been victims of terrorist attacks in recent years. Last year, the UK was rocked by terror attacks in Manchester and London. In Spain, innocent people were mown down on Las Ramblas. Our countries shared the pain of these attacks, During the London Bridge attack, it was a Spanish national, Ignacio Echeverria, who sadly lost his life when he confronted terrorists only with his skateboard to try and save others. He was posthumously awarded the George Medal this year. That's Britain's highest civilian honour, and I'm pleased to say that his father will come to Buckingham Palace next month to collect the award. In Barcelona, one of the victims of the terrorist attack there was a 7-year-old boy, a dual national of Britain and Australia. I will take the opportunity on my visit today to pay tribute to all the victims of mindless terrorism later in the Bosque del Recuerdo. Both our countries face an enduring threat from Islamist terrorism, which we work together to combat on a daily basis, wherever it manifests itself, whether it's on our streets or it's online. There are also other threats that we continue to face together. For instance, the threat from large-scale cybercrime is growing as digital technologies advance. Cybercrime does not respect any borders, and this was shown to devastating effect when the WannaCry ransomware attack impacted 100 countries around the globe. We also face the threat of hostile state activity. We both have a watchful eye on Russia, following on from the despicable nerve agent attack that took place in the UK in Salisbury earlier this year, which left 4 people fighting for their lives and 1 innocent woman dead. Following this attack, many European countries stood with the UK to take decisive action, with Spain expelling 2 diplomats in response, and we are grateful to Spain for standing with us following that attack. When it comes to our security, we know that when we collaborate, we are at our strongest. We know that sharing tools, sharing data and expertise, it keeps people safe in Spain, in Britain, and across Europe too. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're working together through the EU, through NATO, and bilaterally in all sorts of different ways. For example, in March this year, 39 women were freed from sexual exploitation at the hands of an organised criminal gang here in Spain. It was as a result of a joint operation between the UK's National Crime Agency and Spanish and Nigerian law enforcement. In April, the National Crime Agency again worked with Spanish law enforcement to seize nearly 9 tons of cocaine in Algeciras, the largest ever haul from a single container in Europe. And of course, nowhere is Anglo-Spanish cooperation stronger or more visible than the joint operation called the Captura campaign, which has seen some 81 dangerous British fugitives successfully tracked down and arrested. Without this cooperation between our agencies, these fugitives, these 81, would still be at large. These people traffickers could still be lurking in our communities, and their drugs could still be flooding into our streets. This cooperation is often underpinned by EU law enforcement and criminal justice measures, which we both make use of to our mutual benefit. In particular, I welcome the strong cooperation and leadership that the UK and Spain have shown within Europol to drive forward the EU's efforts to tackle illicit firearms trafficking. We make extensive mutual use of European arrest warrants to arrest criminals, helping with firearms trafficking and so much else. For example, in the last 5 years, the UK arrested over 200 people on behalf of Spain, and the Spanish authorities have arrested over 180 on our behalf. We are also both part of the Schengen Information System, which enables the sharing of real-time automated alerts on missing and wanted people with law enforcement agencies right across Europe. We're working together to tackle child sexual abuse. Just last year, our Spanish partners assisted us in the arrest of one of the UK's most wanted sex offenders. This twisted paedophile had been hiding in Spain for nearly 2 years. If he hadn't been caught, he may well be preying today on even more children. The European arrest warrant enabled Spanish authorities to locate him and return him to face justice in the UK, and he is now behind bars. These are just some of the examples of the collaborative security work that is going on every single day. In all areas, from counter-terrorism to serious organised crime, we are working together to keep our citizens safe. That is in both of our interests. The nature of the current threat from serious organised crime, from cybercrime, from terrorism, from hostile state activity, all of this is truly global, and it constantly changes as geopolitics and technologies evolve. To keep pace with this, and to ensure that we respond effectively, we must continue to work together. Criminals who seek to harm our citizens, exploit vulnerable people, damage our economies and challenge our values are finding new ways to do so, regardless of borders and regardless of geography. So we must continue to find new ways to fight back. That means having seamless operational cooperation, real-time sharing of data, and state-of-the-art technology. It means ensuring that those who would cause us harm know that they cannot escape justice by crossing from the UK into Spain or vice versa. It means sharing our expertise, our experience, our intelligence, so that we can always be one step ahead. The UK Prime Minister said earlier this year that the UK is unconditionally committed to European security. And I want to reiterate that message today, that deal or no deal, we remain committed to ensuring the security of Europe. I'm pleased that Minister Grande Marlaska has taken the time today to discuss with me the future of our security cooperation. Because the benefits of our security cooperation and its importance is very clear. And this cooperation is facilitated and enhanced by access to EU tools and measures to the benefits of citizens in both of our countries and, of course, across the rest of Europe. We want an ambitious security relationship going forward after Brexit, which we have clearly set out. We accept, of course, that once we're outside the EU, our relationship must be quite different. We understand that. But it doesn't have to be weaker. We accept that things will need to change. We will not be carrying on as if we were a member state. We will be leaving all the various EU institutions. We will no longer be involved in EU decision-making. But the point is, we can make these changes and others without undermining the day-to-day operational cooperation which plays such an important role in keeping European citizens safe. We want our security relationship with Spain, indeed with all our European partners, to be as strong and as effective as ever once we have left the European Union. That's why the UK government has proposed a comprehensive treaty between the UK and the European Union, which will allow security cooperation to continue and for lives to continue to be saved. The kind of model that we're proposing is one that the EU is actually familiar with. It's relatively simple, but we need the political will to help make this happen. The alternative, which would be to abandon the EU cooperation tools, would lead to a damaging reduction in our ability to work together despite our very best efforts. While we have some initial conversations with the Commission, we now need it to go further and faster to help make sure that all our citizens stay safe and that crooks cannot prosper. Now, I've spoken a lot today about the importance of working together in all sorts of different areas. Indeed, it's something our two countries have been very good at for a great many years. In fact, the UK and Spanish diplomatic relationship goes back over 500 years, and our commercial ties go back even longer than that. And as I've said, the security links between the UK and Spain have been going from strength to strength. But we are now facing an intensive period of negotiations which will define the future relationship between the UK and the EU. That will, of course, have implications for our security cooperation in the future. And I very much hope that the negotiations will reach a conclusion which ensures that we are able to continue to cooperate effectively with our European partners to keep our people safe. We have made the UK's commitment to Europe and European security, we've made that commitment very clear, setting out what we think is the best way to guarantee it. So today, I want to promise you this, that I will continue to do all I can to make sure that the relationship between our two great nations remains strong, that our citizens are kept safe, and that long into the future, we can continue to face our common threats and our common challenges together. Juntos. Thank you.
Sí, vamos a esperar a que le pongan el... Mientras tanto, muchas gracias, señor ministro. Como ha dicho nuestro presidente, estamos encantados y es un honor tenerle con nosotros. Yo recuerdo al público que nos queda, vamos a tener como una media horita de debate, que están todos ustedes invitados a hacernos llegar preguntas para nuestro protagonista. Tienen cartulinas como estas en sus asientos y, por favor, con letra clara, porque la vista empieza ya a fallar, e identificando el medio al que pertenecen o la institución que representan para poder hacerle llegar las preguntas. Y yo, abusando de mi posición aquí, pues voy a romper el fuego con una pregunta que es obligada, porque ha tenido la deferencia el secretario de venir a vernos prácticamente sin hablar con los medios después de la reunión con su homólogo español. Yo quería preguntarle por los resultados de ese encuentro con el señor Grande Marlaska. Ha sonado su intervención un poco como a petición de ayuda. ¿Le ha dado el ministro español algún tipo de garantías de que, pase lo que pase en las negociaciones del Brexit, la cooperación en la lucha contra el terrorismo, la cooperación bilateral en la lucha contra el crimen organizado van a seguir siendo tan buenas o incluso mejores como hasta ahora?
Good. Thank you. The discussion with the minister was very positive and very positive and constructive. In that, first of all, there was very clear recognition of how well Britain and Spain works together across security, whether it's serious organised crime, it's terrorism, and hostile states. You know, how well we work together. And that cooperation has been going on for many years, and it has definitely helped to keep our citizens safe. This is a very strong, one of the strongest sort of law enforcement security arrangements that we have across the world, and so there's strong recognition of that. And we also talked about how Britain's decision to leave the EU, if there was no security arrangement, following that, how despite our best efforts, that cooperation would be impacted. So, I mentioned a moment ago some of the European tools that we rely on for security cooperation, such as arrest warrants, some of the data sharing, for example, sharing of criminal records. And we recognise that without an agreement that would be hit. And so none of us want to see a change in the level of cooperation. And I think there's a strong understanding that we'll work together with the Commission and with our other European friends to find a solution and a way forward that continues to first recognise the contribution Britain makes to European security, but also mostly emphasises that it's to the benefit of all European nations, not just Britain, not just Spain, but all European nations.
Tengo una pregunta que nos traslada una de nuestras corresponsales en Londres, una pregunta muy pegada a la actualidad. Una compañera se llama Judith Mora, que dice: ¿puede por favor explicarnos el acuerdo que ayer mismo tomó el gobierno británico sobre el trato a los emigrantes en el Reino Unido después del Brexit?
I can say something about it. I can't say too much, only because very shortly we will be publishing in detail a white paper of how we see our future immigration system. But what we discussed, or have been discussing for a while now as a government, and there was an important meeting on this yesterday, was just what that system should look like, because once the UK has left the EU, we will be able to redesign our immigration system and look at exactly how we would want that to work. So yesterday was a discussion about those issues, and we want to be informed by the evidence about the immigration, the impact on the UK, and all these important issues. So we had commissioned a report, an independent report, by a group that is called the Migration Advisory Committee, so it's not part of government, completely independent. And its report was published last week, at the end of last week. And that's why we had the government discussion yesterday, because we wanted to take into account what was in the report. And whilst we're not ready to set out clearly what that looks like just yet, because we're just finalising this white paper, I think some of the things have already are clear both from that report and some of the things we've already said. So, for example, it is clear that when we leave the European Union, and at the end of the implementation period, at the end of that period, so starting January 2021, there will be a complete end to freedom of movement. So the freedom of movement will no longer be part of the UK immigration system. That said, we still want to have a system that is outward looking, is a system which shows that Britain is still a country that's open to skilled people from across the world, if that's something the British economy needs. So that's broadly what happened yesterday, but we will be saying more about it soon.
¿Usted personalmente es partidario de mantener un trato preferente para los nacionales de la Unión Europea en el Reino Unido durante un periodo, al menos el periodo de transición?
Yes, well, during the transition period, nothing really changes in terms of immigration policy, because during the transition period, the existing rules will stay in place. So there will still be freedom of movement in it. So if we have a deal during the transition period, there will still be freedom of movement. I mean, that's already been agreed, that's been announced, if there's a deal. Beyond that, when we move to a new immigration system, we've already been clear is that as we enter into trade agreements with, let's say, with the EU, which is obviously top of our list to negotiate, but as we work with other countries as well, there will certainly be what we might call a mobility sort of part of that agreement. And in our proposal to the European Union now, the so-called Chequers proposal, or the white paper on the Chequers proposal, we've set out what that could look like in an agreement with the EU.
Otra pregunta que nos trasladan desde nuestra oficina en Londres, la jefa de nuestra oficina, Almudena, me pide que le pregunte qué diferencias persisten sobre policía y cooperación.
Sorry, do you mind starting again? Sorry.
Yeah.
Cut off.
Bueno, le traslado una pregunta de nuestros compañeros en Londres a propósito de Gibraltar. ¿Qué diferencias persisten todavía entre el gobierno británico y el gobierno español a propósito de la cooperación policial y judicial en las negociaciones del Brexit, pero relativas al caso de Gibraltar?
I'm not directly involved in the Gibraltar negotiations, but clearly it is very important to us. It's important to Gibraltar, of course it's important to Spain. And for what I can see, I'm very optimistic. I think that all sides involved in negotiations want to see a practical, sensible outcome, particularly around the border issues. There's thousands of people that are affected each day in terms of Gibraltar and Spain. And I think it's important that in those discussions we focus on the sort of practical sides and how we can help. And that's why in the discussions, working both with the government of Spain and the government in Gibraltar, I think it's important that all sides are working closely together. But from what I can see, I'm quite optimistic, because I think all sides are trying to take a very constructive approach, because they want to do what's in the interest of their citizens.
En el Reino Unido, señor ministro, han aumentado las detenciones de miembros de extrema derecha y de grupos anti-islamistas, como la English Defence League y Football Lads Alliance. ¿A usted le preocupa el ascenso de los grupos de extrema derecha en su país?
Yes, I am. And I mentioned terrorism earlier in my remarks, and I focused on some instances of Islamist terrorism. But we obviously, like Spain, we consider about all types of terrorism, wherever it comes from. It clearly needs to, we need to have a strategy to tackle that. And we have seen a rise in the UK in recent years in both extremism and also extreme right-wing terrorism. A few months ago I announced I said for the first time that since March of last year, our security services have foiled 17 terrorist plots. And of those 17, 14 were Islamist terrorist plots, and the others were extreme right-wing terrorist plots. And we have also found through our de-radicalization program, something we call Prevent, to try and sort of basically prevent extremism, working with people whenever there's a concern that there might be some extremist attitudes. We found that last year almost a quarter of those people that we were working with were extreme right-wing extremists, not Islamist or others. So and that's a rise. That's quite a considerable rise. So we remain concerned. We're doing a lot to try and combat it, and it's never easy, these things, but it is an area of concern, and we remain focused on that too.
Nuestros colegas de Antena 3, Jean-Marie Gutiérrez, le traslada una pregunta sobre el Brexit, la hace en inglés. Is Brussels underestimating Britain's strength of will, or is it the UK government that miscalculates? Después de saludo.
If you'd asked me in Spanish, I would have said this failed and refused to answer the question, but now you've tricked me into this. Look, I think that clearly for the EU, clearly from the negotiation, there's certain aims, and we understand that. And from the UK as well, there's certain aims that we have, and there's certain things for us that are very important, and we could not compromise on. So, for example, the Prime Minister said just last week that the integrity of the United Kingdom, she's referring to between the Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, is absolutely fundamental and is not something that we can have an internal border. So we cannot compromise things like that. But equally, we understand the EU will have certain things that they will not want to move on. That said, I think the common ground is far greater than any differences, and despite the ups and downs of the negotiations, which we've seen over, ever since the Brexit vote, to be honest, we've seen ups and downs in that discussion. I think there's a strong will on both sides to reach an agreement, and whilst yes, the clock is ticking away, I think that an important moment now will be what happens in the October Council meeting, but I think minds are concentrating and working on what the final deal might look like, but both sides understand that it's in their mutual interest. Whether I talked today about security, but I didn't talk much about the economic relationship, the people relationship, all those are very important, and I think there's a strong will to get on both sides.
Y abundando en esto, ¿cuál es el ambiente en el gabinete? ¿El Chequers plan está muerto?
No, not at all. We've put a plan to the EU, a very detailed plan, the Chequers plan. We've published it in quite some detail, and it's clearly being considered by the Commission and Council members and others. But it is the plan that's on the table, and the EU now has to respond to it sort of formally and say what it might like, what it might not like, and if it's something it doesn't like, does it have a suggestion, an alternative? But we're waiting for that formal response, and I don't think it will come until the October Council. We respect the decision-making process within the EU, but the plan is the one that's on the table, and that's what we're looking for a response for.
Hay varias preguntas que llegan en el mismo sentido, que resumo, preguntándole qué cree usted más probable, un segundo referéndum o unas elecciones anticipadas.
There's not going to be a second referendum. So there's not going to be a second referendum. This government we would never support a second referendum. And simply because, I mean, there's lots of reasons not to have a second referendum, but the first reason is that if you ask I believe, I'm a Democrat, so I believe if you ask the public, and whether that's obviously the British public, I think any democracy that holds a referendum, if you ask the public for their opinion and they give it to you, it's very dangerous for the politicians then to ignore the will of the people. So the British people have made their decision clear. They have issued their instructions to the politicians clearly, and it's our job to get on with it. And we've never pretended it's easy. It's never going to be an easy process to implement the decision, but we're getting on with it. And there's, I think there's no chance. This government of a second referendum, there's no chance.
Oigo lo que usted dice sobre el descartar por completo un segundo referéndum, incluso aunque haya elecciones y los laboristas lo lleven en su programa. Pero usted era partidario en su día de la permanencia del Reino Unido en la Unión Europea, con matices, el tema de la integración política y demás, ¿no? Y ahora se encuentra entre los políticos que es partidario por lo menos de cambiar de táctica, ya que el plan Chequers ha sido rechazado, para intentar conseguir quizá un acuerdo similar al que tiene el Reino Unido con Canadá. ¿Es cierto?
I'd mention two things there. I mean, first of all, the Chequers plan has not been rejected. I can understand that from some of the sort of commentary following the Salzburg meetings last week, why somebody might suggest that. But the EU has made itself clear. It hasn't rejected the plan. There's concerns, there's issues, there are aspects, and as I said, the EU needs to then formalize it and say what are the issues, but it hasn't been rejected. And I think right after the Salzburg meetings, for example, President Tusk has made it clear as well that there are elements that he likes, there's elements he doesn't, but it hasn't been rejected. On the first part of your question, first and foremost, what I was in favour of is a referendum. So the referendum. I was in favour of a referendum. I think it was right that the UK had a referendum on this issue. The issue, at least in the UK, has been in political debate, public debate for years, for decades. And so it's right that the government allowed the British people to decide and to make a decision. And because first and foremost I'm in favour of a referendum, then again, as a Democrat, you accept the result of a referendum, regardless of what might be in your personal votes, because my vote in the referendum was no more powerful than the vote of a man or woman on the street.
A propósito del referéndum, tengo una muy interesante pregunta del coordinador de nuestro servicio en inglés, que es un compatriota suyo, Harold Haeckel, que plantea lo siguiente. Dice, hubo muchos británicos, quizá millones, que no pudieron votar en el referéndum sobre el Brexit, porque han vivido fuera más de 15 años del Reino Unido y porque en el caso de Escocia no pudieron ejercer sus derechos a voto, al sufragio, los menores de 18 años. En caso de un segundo e improbable referéndum, como parecen proponer los laboristas, ¿no sería bueno corregir estas anomalías de aquí al futuro?
No, because they're not anomalies. It's the law in Britain about who gets to vote and who doesn't get to vote. So in the UK, in our general elections, for example, you cannot vote unless you're 18 or over.
You think it's fair?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's correct. And whether I think it's, even now, if I think it's fair or not, the point is that's the law at the time the referendum has been decided by the Parliament. So you have to apply the law, and that is the law. There was a debate about this in Parliament, but Parliament rejected making any change to the voting age or overseas voters you mentioned as well. So, Parliament is, we're a thriving democracy like Spain, and you debate it in Parliament, and if Parliament isn't willing to accept the change, and ultimately you follow the will of Parliament, because we respect the rule of law.
Última pregunta sobre esta cuestión. De acuerdo con los argumentos, pero la situación ha cambiado. Puede llegar el momento en el que no haya un acuerdo con la Unión Europea, se produzca un hard Brexit. Ahora se saben las consecuencias de todo eso. ¿No sería conveniente volver a preguntar?
Nice try, but no. Because you even started by saying, I agree with you, and then you went for it. But no, I don't. There cannot be a second referendum for the reason that I said. And in the negotiations, we're not contemplating failure. We're working for success, finding a way forward. That said, any sensible government would always look at all potential outcomes. And we have separately be preparing for a no-deal outcome, not because we expect it. I don't think that's going to be the outcome, but because it's just sensible to be as prepared as you can for all outcomes.
En última pregunta, porque nos llegan varias en el mismo sentido, sobre Birmingham, el Congreso conservador en unos días. ¿Se ve usted como favorito, pregunta nuestro compañero de La Razón, para suceder a Theresa May? En cualquier caso, ¿estará usted entre los críticos?
I think that we have already a fantastic Prime Minister. She's doing a very good job, and that's all we need right now is her to keep doing her job.
Última pregunta, señor ministro. Divertida, ligera. Cuando usted fue nombrado secretario de Finanzas del Tesoro, en un gesto que le hizo célebre, un gesto que fue famoso, desechó la oportunidad de decorar su despacho con obras de arte de los fondos del Estado. En su lugar, decidió poner un retrato de Margaret Thatcher. ¿Sigue ese retrato en su despacho actualmente?
Yes. It's been in every... That was my first government job as a Treasury Minister, and it's gone with me, that portrait, to every office that I've had since then, because she was a great woman, and she loved Spain.
Muchas gracias, Ministro. Se nos acaba el tiempo. Nos gustaría quedarnos muchas horas más discutiendo, tratando de ver cómo ayudar a nuestros amigos británicos a salir del rompecabezas donde están, pero se nos acaba el tiempo. Les recuerdo que hay un pequeño cóctel a la salida. Muchísimas gracias, Home Secretary. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.